Okay, welcome to PresentERs. Today we have Paul Mathieson, who is an associate professor of clinical English at Nara Medical University in Japan. And he holds an MA in Applied Linguistics and TESOL from University of Leicester. He's taught English at a variety of levels in Japan for the past 13 years and as well as extensive reading. His research interests include vocabulary acquisition, learner motivation, English for specific purposes, and content and language integrated learning, CLIL. So he has a lot of different areas that he's interested in, but today he's going to be talking about English for academic purposes and his graded reader series that he developed for helping students to maintain and grow their academic English. So, without further ado, Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you also to Noriko-san for all the organization and getting me here. It's a real pleasure to be here. Firstly, just a quick clarification. I think I sent you a really old bio. I don't know how
Ah,
that got through the mix. So yeah, I just completed my PhD since I sent that bio to you a few years ago. So just wanted to point that out. This was actually my PhD project, what I'm going to talk about today, or part of what I'm going to talk about today. So yeah, so those of you who don't know me, yeah, I'm Paul. I'm the head of the Department of Basic Medical English at Nara Medical University. And today I am going to attempt to answer the question which forms the title of the presentation today, um, uh, English for academic purposes plus extensive reading. What is it? Uh, well, I hope to show you that it is the book series that I have developed, which are a graded reader series to support academic vocabulary learning. So the book series is called My Mysterious Friend Sora, and it's also referred to as the AWL readers. So for those of you who don't know what the AWL part refers to, it's Avril Coxhead's academic word list, which is the most widely used academic vocabulary list, uh, has been for the last 2 decades and still is, despite more recent iterations of academic word lists that have come out in the 2 decades since Avril produced hers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the development of the books first, and then I'm going to share the results of some of my research into the use of the books at my institution. I'm going to do that by looking at the statistical data I gathered about it, and also some of the feedback that I got from the students about the books as well. And then in the final part of the presentation today, I'm going to talk about how the AWL readers have been used beyond my learning setting, because they're now available in Xreading, and other teachers at both high school level and university level have been using them, and maybe offer some thoughts or ideas for how you could use them if that's of interest to you. And then finally, a bit of a wrap up, future directions kind of thing, and Q&A. So first, I think it's important for me to tell you a little bit about my teaching and learning context, because that's really where the books came from. So I've been working at Nara Medical University now for 10 years, and our first year medical students, as part of their English for academic purposes medical English course, study the academic word list, and they're required to take weekly vocabulary tests for academic word list words. And for that test, what they're required to do is to make grammatically correct sentences that show that they understand the meaning of the AWL words for 10 randomly chosen words from that week's test. So we follow the AWL through in sequence. The AWL is divided into 10 sublists, so there's 570 words in total, but there are 10 sublists based on frequency. So sublist 1 of the AWL is the most frequently used academic words, and then all the way down to sublist 10, which is the least frequently used words out of the AWL. So our students do those sublists week by week, and at the end of each week, they are tested on them. And then at the end of their course, they have to pass three summative final AWL tests, which include AWL words from all 10 of the lists, so out of all of the 570 words. And it's very high stakes for our students, not just the tests, not just the vocabulary tests, but they're studying life in general. If they don't pass three of those final AWL all-inclusive tests, they fail their English course. And if they fail any course, they repeat a year. They're held back a year. So failing only one course means all of their classmates move along, and they are held back for 1 year to repeat the course that they couldn't pass. So we have a lot of very stressed medical students. It's different for our nursing students, but our medical students, that's the system. Fail one course, any course, and you're held back a year. And of course, because the AWL component of our English course is so high stakes, that means there are a lot of stressed students who are desperately trying to learn these AWL words. And so that has put a lot of, I think, pressure in a way on the teachers to help prepare our students for those tests and make sure that they have a good grasp of those academic words. So a few years ago, knowing that we had these stressed students and knowing that academic vocabulary was such an important part of their course and one of the most difficult parts of the course for many students, I decided to help them out by making some example sentences for all of the words, all of the 570 words, adding some humorous situations to those sentences. And I had some help from students with this, I should add as well, with piloting the sentences to make sure that they were not just funny to me, but funny to young Japanese people. And while I was doing that, one of the things that I decided to do was to just pick two names of people that I would use throughout those example sentences, rather than using lots of different names, Yuki, David, Sarah. I decided that I was only going to use two names, and for the female character as such, it would be Kate, and for the male actor, it would be Tom. And so I made all these sentences, and some of them had no human agents in them, but other things had Tom doing something stupid or Kate doing something nasty to Tom. Tended to be the pattern, as you can see, I think, from the example sentences I've got here. And one of the things that sort of came out of this was that some students commented, gave me some feedback about it, talking about how there was a sort of a story that developed, and it was, even though they were random sentences, there was a real perception amongst the students of Tom being an idiot and often getting into trouble and doing dumb things, and Kate often doing really nasty things to people and to Tom in particular. And so this gave me the idea of doing something similar to that, but actually making a story that incorporated all of the AWL words. So this was around the time of the first year of the COVID pandemic. So I had quite a lot of free time on my hands. I was spending a lot of time at home, doing online classes. And so this really gave me the opportunity to start, making this thing happen, of bringing these words, putting these words into a story setting. So my kind of principles behind the development of the AWL readers were that I wanted to obviously include all of the AWL words in the books. And my idea was to include them in sequence. So based on the lists, the sequence of the lists, because that's how our students study them. So, for example, in week 2 of the course, our students are studying AWL sublist 1. And so when I wrote the books, I wanted there to be a book 1 that included all of the words from sublist 1 in it. And then the same throughout for all of the AWL sublists. So I wanted to make a 10-volume series, 10 books, and each book would focus on one of the AWL sublists. But also I wanted to have some recycling of the AWL words too. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but I didn't want it to just be one instance, one use of the words. I wanted them to be used, if possible, multiple times throughout the books. And the books were intended to be graded readers, so I wanted it to be at a level that was going to be manageable for our students. So based on previous vocabulary testing we've done, our medical students have really solid knowledge of up to around the 4,000 word level in the BNC Koka word families list. So I wanted to have around 95 to 98% coverage of words up to that level, obviously excluding the AWL words because some of them are beyond that. And in terms of the books, because there are 10 books in the series, I wanted there to be some drama in each of the books. I wanted each book to have its own kind of momentum and interest factor for the students. And obviously, seeing as I was essentially writing it for my students, I wanted it to be both a story and have characters in the story that were relatable to my medical students. So the story is about a Japanese medical student, Naomi, and her, as the title of the series suggests, her unusual friend called Sora. And when I was planning the books and starting to get, the story idea together, I took a lot of inspiration from students. I had so I based it on in class and out of class interactions that I'd had with my students. I unashamedly used some characters in the story that were loosely based on former students of mine. Obviously different names and so on and so forth. But we no longer have this thanks to the ubiquitousness of AI now, and it's just ruining everything. We don't do learner diaries anymore. We used to have learner diaries where students would write 5 days of diaries each week in English, which would only be seen by their teacher, and then the teachers where we'd give them feedback based on their diaries. And I got a lot of information actually about the kind of activities that my students were up to, both in their non-English classes, but also just in their life as students out off campus, in clubs, in their part-time jobs. And so that was also a really, really valuable resource for me when I was planning and then writing these books. And then finally, I conducted a series of interviews with some of our ESS Club, English Speaking Society Club members, senior students, because I was sort of aware that we teach medical and nursing students at the start of their degrees. So we teach first year and second year medical students and only first year nursing students. So I didn't really have a solid grasp of what our students were getting up to, our medical students, in their third, fourth, fifth, sixth years, other than just sort of looking at the syllabus curriculum and understanding what subjects they were taking. So talking to senior students was a really valuable way for me to get inspiration and ideas for the books. So I said at the outset that I wanted the books to be 10 volumes, 10 books in the series, one book for each of the AWL sublists. And I also wanted to have systematic recycling of all of those AWL words. And so what I decided to do was to have all of the words in the next book of the series recycled again. So what I mean is, for example, book 3 of the series has all of the AWL words from sublist 3, because each book follows each sublist, but also each book includes all of the words that were in all of the AWL words that were in the previous book. So book 3 of the series includes all of the words from AWL sublist 3, but it also includes all of the words from AWL sublist 2 recycled again in different sentences, different contexts. So in that way, there was a kind of a guaranteed way that all of the words were recycled at least a couple of times through the entire series. And so you can see my little screenshot here of how I manually went through and checked that all of the words were both included in the first run. So, sublist 3 words were all included in book 3, but also that sublist 2 words were then all recycled in book 3 as well. And as I said before, it's a graded reader series, so I wanted to make sure that the vocabulary and the grammar was at a sort of a level that roughly matched our students' proficiency level. And so I aimed to have really solid coverage of up to the 4,000 word level. And as you can see here, this is the data using Tom Cobb's Lex Tutor program. So all of the books from 1 to 10 had between 95, I think the lowest was 96% coverage for up to the 4,000 word mark, but most of them were 97 to 98%. So there was a really, really solid coverage of vocabulary that our students should already know, of course, excluding the academic vocabulary, which they were learning. This is a little graphic that Paul Goldberg and Rob Waring helped me with to put some sort of context into the AWL readers. So the whole series, the 10 books, it's around 80,000 words, which is a lot. That's roughly the length of a novel in English, a sort of standard length novel, I guess. So it's a lot of words for students to read, but in order for students to get the same sort of academic vocabulary or academic word list coverage from other sources, you can see the comparisons here. So if students want to get, all 570 AWL words repeated by reading ungraded fictional texts, it would probably take them somewhere around 1,200,000 words. And this is actually based on some research that Rob McQuillan did, looking at 2 corpuses. One was a juvenile literature corpus, so young teen readers, so non-graded texts, and also a corpus of not a corpus, the Harry Potter books, which he used as part of his study too. So that's a lot more words that students have to read, way more words, to get the same sort of level of coverage of academic words that you get in the AWL readers. And someone's got their microphone on.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I've just muted them.
Okay, great. And if you wanted to, if you wanted to get the same sort of coverage with, all of the words and there's around 3,000 instances of the AWL words being used in the AWL readers. So if you wanted to get to that level, you're going to need to read nearly 6 million words, which is just a heck of a lot of words. And Rob Waring and I came up with this number based on some very helpful analysis that he provided for me for getting the same sort of coverage of academic or AWL words in ungraded academic text, so like journal articles, newspapers, and so on. Still a large number of words that students are going to have to read. So I think one of the benefits of the books is that they provide very good bang for your buck, I guess is the way to put it. Even though it's 80,000 words, to get that same level of academic word coverage, students are going to have to do a lot of reading. So the books are available in the Xreading virtual library. And as I said at the start, they're being used by, much further afield than my university. They're being used in high schools in China and other universities here. I've talked to Thai students, Mongolian students, and teachers who've been using them. So that's been one of the really cool things for me is having them, available for other teachers and students to use. So do they work? Do the AWL readers help students to learn academic vocabulary? Big question. So as I mentioned, I did some research on this a couple of years ago now. So in my research, I had 3 groups for the research project. For test group 1, 34 members of that, students were reading the AWL readers as they are in the Xreading library. And the second group in that study were reading the AWL readers, but with Japanese glosses in the margins for the AWL words when the AWL words were used for the first time. So only when that word came up the first time in the book, in the series, there was a marginal gloss, a gloss in the margin right next to that sentence showing the Japanese translation of the word as it was used in that sentence. And then the control group for the study did another extensive reading project. They were reading a series of books that was around the same length as the AWL readers and around the same level. Because we were using it for assessment, we had to make sure that there was a fair comparison in terms of the amount of work that students were doing. And then to measure the academic vocabulary knowledge growth, we administered pre-tests, post-test, and then delayed post-tests, which measured different aspects of their academic word knowledge. And we also did a survey about how they studied academic words. So I'll go through this a little bit quickly because it's I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A today, and I'm already a little bit behind. So the test that we used to measure the vocabulary knowledge had 4 sections based on Paul Nation's conceptualization of word knowledge. So there was a sentence writing section, which was very similar, in fact, the same actually, to their weekly academic word list test that they were taking as part of their course. So for that, they were just tasked with making a sentence with an academic word, and the sentence had to be grammatically correct and show that they understood the meaning of the words. And then there was a separate collocation section where it was a receptive knowledge section, so they had to choose two words that had very strong collocative connections with the AWL word. There was a synonym section where they had to identify the correct synonym for the AWL word, and then finally there was a meaning matching, Japanese meaning matching section as well. And we've published, myself and my co-authors have published research on this part, how we made the test and the testing, the validation process for the test. So we did the pre-test before they started reading the books, in the week, I think, before they right at the start of the course, before they'd started studying AWL words and started reading the books. And then the post-test was administered at the end of the course, right around the time that they were taking their final AWL summative tests that were essential for them to pass the course. And so all of the groups, the control group, the gloss group, and the group that didn't have the glosses, all increased their total score on the AWL, the academic word knowledge test, from pre-test to post-test. And this is that data presented in a more granular way by each section. So the meaning and the grammar, the first part here is the sentence writing section. We had 2 ways of marking that. We had a very strict approach where if there were any grammar mistakes or any spelling mistakes, the sentence was marked as incorrect. And we had a more lenient marking approach where we allowed for small mistakes that didn't affect understanding. So you can see here that there was growth across all of the test groups, and I think part of the reason for that was largely because of the course-related assessment. As I said, this post-test was done at the time that they were taking their course-related summative assessment, and so there was a lot of pressure on them to pass those course-related tests. And so they were taking this post-test at the same time, which means they were studying, I think, AWL words at that time as well. And so I think this sort of showed maybe that, the students who'd read the AWL readers maybe didn't get as much value from that based on time on task, because at this stage, when they were doing the post-test, I think all students were stressed out and worried about passing their course-related AWL tests. But we did a follow-up test, a delayed post-test, I think it was 2.5 months later, so quite a substantial amount of time later, after they'd been on a holiday break, and it was unannounced. So this was an unannounced test as a follow-up. And the surprising thing with that test, certainly for me, was that the control group, so the group who hadn't read the AWL readers, that their overall score, overall performance on the test we set up went down by a statistically significant amount, and both of the groups who'd read the AWL readers had continued to go up. In the non-gloss group, I think it was a marginal increase, but still for the gloss group, statistically significant, a slightly statistically significant increase. So and obviously a very big difference between the groups, and a statistically significant difference between the three groups when looked at together. So that was very happily surprising result for me. And here's that data from the delayed post-test shown in section by section detail. So you can see the gray group here is the control group. So they went down in every area of knowledge that we measured. And you can see that the other two groups went, with the exception of definitions at the end, where all the groups went down slightly. The two test groups performance went up on the delayed test. And sorry, I should go back to that. And I think that this test arguably is perhaps a truer reflection of their actual word knowledge growth and the impact of seeing the words used in context and spending that substantial amount of time on the task of finishing reading the AWL readers, because this test was done at a time when they were not facing an external factor, which was passing those course-related tests. This was a surprise test at a time when they were not studying the AWL words independently. And so I think maybe this is, a truer indication of the actual benefit of reading the AWL readers for academic word knowledge growth. This just shows what I just showed you in number form in terms of the growth of the three groups from pre-test to delayed post-test. So yeah, you can see the substantial percentage growth from the test groups as opposed to the control group. So I mentioned, I'll quickly breeze through this because I want to get on to the last part of my presentation. We also collected some data from students about their impressions of the books and also how they how they saw them as a tool for learning academic vocabulary, and also how they actually studied for the academic vocabulary tests. So we selected 6 students. They were all from the test groups, obviously because the control group didn't read the AWL readers. So we only selected students from the two different groups that read the AWL readers. And so most of them, 4 out of the 6, said that they felt that the books were helpful for learning vocabulary. And there was a lot of comments about the usefulness or the value of seeing the words used in context. And also knowing that the words were used in a correct context, I guess, because we've had some problems in the past with students using less than reliable resources for preparing for AWL tests. So, for example, lists of sentences made by their seniors, some of which were not correct. They used the word in an incorrect way, or there was some major mistake. So yeah, a lot of students said that the value of seeing the words used in context was really helpful for them. What else? I've got to shift all my little windows around here so I can read my slides. Sorry. Now, interestingly, 2 of the 6 participants said that they didn't consider the AWL readers to be particularly helpful for learning academic vocabulary. One of the participants said that when he encountered AWL words in the books, he just tended to kind of gloss over them and didn't really consider the AWL readers as material for studying AWL words. He more saw it as a requirement of the course. And I think he was one of the students who relied more heavily on more traditional Japanese ways of learning vocabulary, word lists, and I think sentence lists as well. So that was very interesting. I'm going to come back to this comment at the end. All of the participants said that they found the books to be engaging and enjoyable. One of the participants said that she thought it was interesting that the book was, followed a young girl who was actually from Nara. It's set in Nara, and a girl who was from her generation, and she could relate to that, and the fact that they kind of go around and get off into all sorts of adventures and misadventures. She said she found that interesting and engaging. Now, this is the most disappointing part of my presentation today. On Friday, as most of you who are in Kansai will know, there was a whole lot of chaos on Friday thanks to the typhoon, and my classes were cancelled on Friday because I couldn't get to Nara because of train outages. And on Friday, this semester, we have started a book review activity for our students in class. And because all of our medical students are reading the Sora series, they're also reading other books too, but they're required to read the Sora books because of the academic word list component of their course. One of the things that's been great this semester, we've just started this year, is that we've been able to get in class kind of live feedback from students about how they rate the books. And I was all set on Friday to take action shots, photos of students, get some video. I wanted to even take a screenshot because they got up to book 10 this last week. They just finished the series last week, was book 10. And so I was all set to take nice photos of the finished Xreading Sora books feedback, but I was undone by the weather. So I've just had to include a generic screenshot of the template that we use. So next time I'm presenting about this, I will be able to hopefully have that all set to go. But that has been really good. And again, a good source of feedback for me too about the usefulness of the books. Okay, so the last part of my presentation is, outside of my context. So as I mentioned, the books are being used at a number of other institutions by students and teachers. I've, with the help of Paul Goldberg, I've participated in some Meet the Author events where I've had a chance to talk to students who have been reading the book. So this was one of the events we did at Juntendo University with Paul Wadden. You can see in the photo on the left here, he was leading this. And so that was a really interesting opportunity for me to actually directly engage with students who are reading the books who were not my students. And these are not medical students either. These are just students doing an English for academic purposes course at Juntendo. And so one of the questions I've been repeatedly asked by people is, are these books for medical students? And the answer to that is yes and no, but it's really no, actually. But it is kind of yes, because it's partly yes, because as I said at the start today, I wrote these books for my students, essentially, and they are medical students. So to that extent, it is for medical students, but it's not exclusively for medical students. The book is meant to be for kind of intermediate level learners, not just Japanese learners, English as a second language learners, who are interested in growing their base of academic vocabulary knowledge. And so the book follows the lives of some Japanese medical students, but only a small part of the action actually takes place, in their classes or on the campus, and most of it is just about their lives. So I believe the books are very much accessible for non-medical students too. So I want to wrap up. I'm almost on 40 minutes. So I said I was going to come back to the comment by the two students who said that they didn't find the books to be particularly useful for learning academic vocabulary. And this was very interesting to me because and I should have done the follow-up interview, and I regret not doing this. I did the interviews right before the summer holidays, and then they broke away, and then I came back and did all the analysis of the interview data months later, and I really wish I'd followed up on that particular feedback point. But I think one of the things that came through from those two comments about the books being seen as not useful for academic vocabulary learning maybe reflect that students, maybe my students, maybe Japanese students in general, perhaps see vocabulary learning in a very kind of linear way. They see it as, well, I learned vocabulary in junior high school this way, and in high school this way, and it got me into university. So that's the way to learn vocabulary, is sitting on a train and memorizing word lists, covering up one side of the word list. And I'm not knocking that as a way to learn vocabulary. That's absolutely a great way to learn vocabulary. But I think to me, it reflected perhaps a misunderstanding on the part of students and possibly teachers too about the real value of incidental vocabulary learning, of seeing words in context and it, as a review source too for words they've already encountered, meeting that word or those words again in a different context, and seeing those words in context. And so I think that to me showed that maybe that was a failing of mine, that I needed to impress on my students more the value of extensive reading, and extensive listening, and extensive viewing, for just building on their vocabulary and their grammar knowledge, and in my case, focusing on academic vocabulary. So I think that's really inspired me to make and try and collate more graded materials. This year, we've started a new project where we're making graded listening podcasts using AI, using 11 labs. So we're making podcasts which are about the academic content that they're studying in their course. It's kind of a summary of their the very dense texts that they're covering, as a way to introduce the topics to the students, but also as a way to kind of make the information hopefully more accessible because it's graded. So that's something we've been doing. And I saw Paul Goldberg jumped in a little while ago. I am also working with him and with Rob Waring on making some new graded readers for medical and nursing students and other healthcare students, with a non-academic vocabulary focus, but as a way to get some more material that is relevant for, interesting for, engaging for the kind of students that I'm teaching. And who knows, one day I may write probably a prequel to the books. Sequel's going to be a bit tough. I won't say why, because if you haven't read the books, you should read them. But I think if I was going to do a follow-up to this series, it would probably be before everything happened in these books. That's it. Sorry, just over 40 minutes, Sandra.
Absolutely no problem. Don't worry. Thank you
Actually, we
so
started
much.
late. We started late, a little late. So
Yes.
actually, I think I'm just under 40 minutes. So yeah.
No, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. There's lots of little clap marks happening in the chat. So
Thank you.
yeah, honestly, really, really interesting. And I've heard you speak about them a couple of times. But you are adding extra information in each time. So
Great.
it's
That's
good.
good. I didn't get caught out for repeating the same presentation.
Well, if it works, it works, I say.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a lot of the information is the same, but there's a few little extra things that have been sort of happening in the intervening years. Some of which, as I said, just this last few months. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Now, I'll start by going to the chat, and Kimberly had a question about the 3,000 instances figure when you were talking
Yep.
about the yeah. Well, you can explain.
Yep. Yes, great question. Thanks, Kimberly. So the 3,000 instances means that so there are 570 words in the AWL list, and as I said, I wanted to make sure that all of the words were used at least twice. So all of the words were used once in order. So in book one, all of the 60 words in AWL sublist 1 were included in book 1. All of the 60 words in AWL sublist 2 were included in book 2. And then I progressively recycled all of those words again in the following books. So that's how I got to that number. Now, so all of the words were used at least twice. Some of the words were used more than twice. For example, medical is an AWL word, and the story is set at a medical university. So the word medical was used, I think, 25 or 30 times. So some of the words were used a lot more than others. There were some really difficult words to kind of shoehorn into the story, to get into the story. There was a one of the AWL words is levy, Levy, like a tax levy. And man, it was really difficult to get that word into a story about some university students more than twice. I think I really stretched it with the twice, and I saw that Rob Waring's here in some feedback that he gave me or through Paul Goldberg as well. He commented that some of the instances of the words were sort of a little jarring, like out of step with the story. That's just the reality of the fact that some of the words were really hard to get in to the story in a very sort of seamless and natural way. So yes, I hope that answers your question, Kimberly. That's what it's actually. It's just under 3,000. I think it's 2,980 something. I haven't got the figure right in front of me. Instances of the words being used, but all of them are used twice, and some of them are used, a lot more than that. Yeah, and I've got that data if you're interested in it.
I'm
Of the
sure
breakdown
so.
of all the words, how often each word and word family members as well, because the AWL is a word family based word list, so it's not just the core item in the AWL, it's all the other related items, word family items for that too. So yeah, I do have that data
Thank
somewhere.
you. Now, Chris has got a question in here saying, were the medical students required to read much in English apart from the AWL readers?
That's a great question too. Yes, they were. So um, when I collected all this data, we were actually not using Xreading at that time. So the AWL Readers series was delivered to them to the students who were reading it through our learner management system each week. So they'd get the book, the next installation of the book each week, right, ahead of the week that they were taking the sublist test. So the week before they were doing sublist 3, they got book 3 in the series, and so that was how we kept that in line. But they were also doing quite a lot of reading outside of the course as well. Quite a lot of reading outside of class, which was related to the course. So we have a flipped classroom approach at Nara Medical University for both medical and nursing students. So that means they have to come to class each week having read the text, that the prescribed text that's set for that week's topic, and it's a new topic each week for our medical students. So there was, and that's intensive reading too. That's not extensive reading. Those are intensive, non-graded texts. So that was, that's a burden, I think, for the students to some extent in terms of the amount of reading that they were doing. Yeah.
So the extensive reading, obviously now you've got Xreading, so I
Yep.
imagine most students will be doing the extensive reading.
Yep.
Before you got Xreading, were they
Yep.
doing extensive reading at all? Like
No.
apart from, oh,
Apart
nothing at
from the
all.
Sora series, no, they were not.
Okay.
So yeah, the Sora books. This was when I collected this data. It was 3 years ago, 3 and a bit years ago. So that was that was the first time that we'd introduced any um, extensive reading component for the medical students. Our nursing students had been doing X reading too, because at that time I was controlling the nursing course. I was not in charge of the medical course. I'm now in charge of the medical course as well. And now our medical students are also on Xreading. Um, so
And
they are, yeah.
how is extensive reading what's the reaction? Is it a positive kind of thing? I mean, or is it a mixed bag like most places, or how are the
I
students taking to it?
Yeah, it's based on the activity that I've sort of mentioned before that we've been doing in class, in terms of like the getting students to talk about the books they've been reading. So it's been I would say mostly good, but a bit of a mixed bag. But one of the things that's been really good is, so now our medical students are reading the Sora books, but they actually, in order to get the full score for their extensive reading component of their course, they actually have to read beyond the Sora books. So to get like a full, they have to read 120,000 words in a semester in order to get the maximum points for their extensive reading assessment. And so that equates to about 40,000 words more than the Sora books, which is required reading for them. So students are also reading other books too. And one of the cool things for me has been seeing students recommending other books to students in class, when they're reviewing the books and talking about the characters that they liked or the story, the parts of the story that they connected with. Obviously they're similar age, similar cultural background. A lot of them have similar interests. That has been something that's been really good.
It's
Yeah.
certainly very rewarding, I'm sure, actually seeing students reading what you have created, which, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll also say, there are some honest students too, that it's been one of the interesting things for me has been seeing students who didn't like parts of the story. I haven't heard anyone this year say, I hate the books, they're terrible, I don't think they're good for vocabulary learning. But I have had a couple of students talk about problems that they had with some of the characters and the choices that they made. And that's been really cool because, I think that's quite brave of because they know I wrote the books, obviously, and I'm kind of like, well done, student X for actually being honest and telling me that you didn't like this aspect of the story or you thought this character was made a strange choice that, you didn't really understand. I thought that, yeah, that's been very, very interesting.
Okay, now, if anyone's got any questions, would you like to ask? Just
A
giving a
quick
chat.
question.
Hey, Paul.
Oh, hey, Paul.
Hey, sorry I was late and had lots of tech issues. Not only the link, but just getting my computer to turn on. Just curious, do you think because your students know you wrote the book that some of the books that might have biased some of their other answers about their feelings towards extensive reading in general, since it is done primarily with your books? For
Um,
some reason, I was under the impression that they did not know it was you who had written them, or maybe when you did the research, they didn't know, and they do now.
so when I did the research, they didn't know, but they do
Okay,
now.
got
Yeah,
it. Okay, so it's that
yeah,
addresses my concern.
yeah. Because and that was obviously a fairly big concern I had when I was actually making this a research project at the outset was the effect of that that potentially biasing
Yeah,
their particularly the qualitative feedback that they gave. So yes, so that was that's different now because I mean
yeah,
my name's now on the book in Xreading, so they can see that it's me who wrote it. So
yeah,
I'd have to be a bit careful about that, I think, if I was going to do further follow-up
yeah.
research on it with my students anyway.
Cool. Okay,
Mm.
yeah. I said I was just kind of surprised. Then now I understand that they know now, but they didn't know then.
Yeah.
Hey, any other questions?
I don't
Okay.
have a question, but I have a comment. Can I comment?
Sure.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I really love your research. It was really interesting. Thank you very much. Teaching high school students and having them, well, a lot of the teachers have them use that book, vocabulary book, tangocho.
Yes.
So it's like a typical like Japanese way of learning lang words. I get a lot of questions from students asking, how can I memorize all these words? We basically, high school students are required to learn the basic 3,000 words in order to get into a fairly good university in
Yep.
Japan.
Yep.
And so they really struggle. They do work very hard, but still, like, just rote learning is a lot of work, but it doesn't stay very much. So some of my students do say that if they can find words that they want to learn in the extensive reading books, it makes them really happy.
Right.
So I'm sure your students feel the same way. And I wish there are more books around for like regular Japanese high school students who can really find those 3,000 words in an extensive reading book. So that's
Yeah.
my comment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. And you're right. Like I think one of the advantages that I think these books have for my students is that they're required to learn those 570 words. They know that coming into their course. And so my hope is that, just that gives the books kind of like face validity for the students. They're like, well, okay, I've got to learn these 570 words and they're all in these books. So that immediately makes reading the books a potentially useful exercise for me, a student. But yeah, it's really difficult when you move that to a larger number of words, general vocabulary words, right? Like the chōtango, right?
Yes.
Because how do you learn 3,000 words in a short space of time to get ready for a university entrance test? And the answer is you probably don't. You need to spend a lot more time. You need to encounter those words more often in different contexts.
Yeah.
And I think for students especially, trying to find ways to encounter those words that are engaging for them, that are interesting for them is really, really important, and it's very hard to do that. I will say, AI can be very helpful with that, I think, in terms of, making, in terms of a resource for making materials that include, all the words that you think are germane, are important words for your students to get to grips with for whatever it is you're doing for your course or for preparing for entrance exams. Um, and at the ER conference in Hokkaido last year, who was it? Was it Rob Briley? His AI graded reader creator tool,
Right. Yeah. Mark.
which
Yeah.
is
AI.
which Mark last launched last year, I think.
Yes.
Things like that, I think, are going to be really helpful for filling that gap. Because, as you say, I think it's really difficult for teachers and certainly for students to find really good materials that have all of the all of the words, if you're looking at vocabulary, that the learners need to learn, to succeed in their course and to get into university or succeed in entrance exams and so on.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in my case, that was lucky because, this was very focused. I knew that this was going to be, I knew the words I had to include, all 570 of them, because I knew that they were the words that my students needed to learn. And so that made it, in that sense, it wasn't an easy task, obviously, but
Mm.
at least I had the scope already set for me. If
Yeah.
you extend that scope out to 3,000 words or 4,000 words, well, that makes it very difficult, I think.
It does. Yes.
Mm.
I
Yeah, great comment, Noriko-san. Thank you.
I have a bit of a cheeky question. When you wrote these, AI was still a newly born infant, shall we say?
Yep.
So you wrote these as opposed to using AI to write them, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So this was 2020 and 2021
Yeah.
was when the books were
So
written.
if you were doing this project again, would you do it again, or would you be using AI to write?
That is a great question. I think, well, if I can just change your question slightly to knock off the end of it and saying, would you use AI? Absolutely. Would I use AI to write it? No. And would I use AI to check it? Also, no. So one of the most labor intensive parts of writing the books was making sure that all the words were in there in sequence and that all of the words were recycled. And I've done something similar with AI in terms of checking vocabulary, and it's not very good. At least the free version. I don't know about the paid version, because I don't have a paid ChatGPT or paid Gemini account. But AI is not very reliable at being foolproof, being 100% correct in saying, yes, Paul, you have included all of the words from sublist 2 in book 2. Well done. I would not trust ChatGPT or Gemini to do that. I would still do that myself. And I definitely would write it myself. I would probably help. So to answer your question, no, I wouldn't mostly, but I would possibly use it for generating some ideas if I got stuck. As I said, I was really lucky. I had lots of inspiration, I guess, from students and from student diaries and from interviews. But I think, AI could be really, really helpful if I was doing this again in terms of giving me some kind of plot ideas, where I could be like, I'm really stuck with this character development. I'm not really sure where he or she should go from here. I would be fine with, calling on AI for some assistance in that way. But I'm a pretty honest academic. And, I'm not going to be contracting out writing my academic papers to AI anytime soon. And same goes for my writing too. I'm a pretty proud person generally, and
That's a very good answer. And I'm
mm,
surprised. I would have thought that perhaps the trying to get ideas, you wouldn't have used AI, but perhaps for checking you would have. But you're quite right. They are not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. So I think,
no.
yeah,
And just to go back to my comment right at the end, I was talking about how Paul Goldberg and Rob Waring and I are planning this next graded reader project. And for that I'm not using AI for that either. I'm in the very much in the planning stage for that, but I'm getting ideas about characters, story development, and that's all just coming from me being on the train and killing time and having time to think stuff through for myself and not saying to AI, "Hey, how do I write a good story about a young nurse and the troubles she's having in her new job?" I'm not really interested in doing that, to be honest. I'd
that's
rather it be organic,
very nice to
literally
hear.
organic. Yeah.
Literally organic. Yes. Now, Jackie's got a comment here or a question. Have the students commented that the AWL words appear in their intensive reading that they do each week? Like, do they actually say, "Oh, that was in yeah"? Have they noticed? Have they have
So
they made
that's a
comments?
great question. So the first answer to that is that the intensive reading texts, there are AWL words scattered throughout those kind of randomly, but they're not targeted. So those texts are just chosen because they fit the course and the topic that forms part of the course. And so, AWL words are not seeded into them deliberately like they were in the AWL readers, if that makes sense. But they're there. That I mean, I think what is it? Avril Cox says that your average academic text in pretty much any subject is likely to have around 10 to 14% of the AWL words in it. Um, Depending on the subject, it might change. Words like function will be more prevalent in mathematics papers and so on, but they're randomly included in there. It's not really controlled, and I haven't actually heard or noticed students say, "Hey, like this word was used 7 times in the text, and I just learned that word. That's great. Now I really know it well." That is something we should probably pay more attention to, I guess.
Now, I've had that with some students who we present vocabulary in class and
Mm.
they do tests on it the following week and they do extensive reading. And I have had several occasions of students coming in and saying, "Oh, my book, this word was appeared in my book," and I knew what it was. So
That's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Mm.
does happen occasionally. Now you talked about the weekly AWL tests that you do
Yep.
for your students. Do you do those in class? Are they written?
Yep.
How are you getting
That's
around the
written
whole?
tests. Yep.
Okay, so
Written in
teaching.
class. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
We actually had another project a few years ago during the pandemic, which was about cheating. Which during that time, obviously, we're all teaching remotely or hybrid. And so at that time, this was right before I did my research project, which was very fortunate for me. Like timing came together really well when I was collecting the data because we'd just gone back to in-class face-to-face classes. So I was able to make sure the testing was all done in front of a teacher, not done remotely. because the previous year when we'd done the AWL weekly tests in class, online, we actually collected data from students about the extent to which cheating was going on, and it was rife. There were so many students who were cheating, and in all sorts of different ways. So yeah, we had a separate. I've actually got a paper about that, which is hopefully going to be published soon about our results from that. So yeah, we're all in class, all face to face, no online testing.
That is very good to hear. Now, Jackie's also got a question here about you mentioned that you did some research about creating and compiling those tests.
Yep.
I think elaborate might be the next thing.
Sure. So yeah, obviously, so that was a large part of my PhD project, was actually developing the tests that we used, because when I started out, I was sort of looking around for other kinds of vocabulary tests that specifically focused on academic vocabulary, but that would measure multiple aspects of the knowledge of those words, not just a form meaning, like match the definition to the word kind of test that you often see with like the vocabulary levels test and so on. And I couldn't find anything that was suitable, so I had to make one myself, which obviously took a lot of time, and I had to, go through the process of validating it. So we had a pilot scheme set up for it where we tested the test. We tested it with teachers, we tested it with students, and we ended up changing some things as a result of that. And then in the final, before we actually used it for collecting the data, we ran statistical analysis of it, and it came up as a reasonably reliable test. And if you want to know more, you can see our paper about it, which I think is here. Did I include our paper? I hope I did. Hang on, sorry.
Kimberly has put a link
it's
in the.
just here. Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yep, sure. Hang on a second. If I can just get out of this, I'll copy and paste it and chuck it in the. I'll put it in the chat. Hopefully that's going to work. Chat.
And Kimberly says that you can go through your Google Scholar page. So that's another way to get to it. Very good. Okay, thank you. That's really good. So that we can have a read. Now, you did mention learner diaries that you were doing, but you discontinued them. Can I ask why?
Yeah, that's great question too. So I think I mentioned, but the main reason was because of AI. So what we found was that, and it was really sad actually. It was my decision ultimately to discontinue the diaries, and I took it with a very heavy heart, because the diaries was, for me, but I know for other teachers too, was a great vehicle for connecting with our students. It really was. You had some students who were just, really shy and sort of almost disassociated in class, but who would just come alive in writing. When they knew that they had the time and it was just an audience of two, them and the teacher. But what we found was, in the last few years, so we set that as an out of class task. So they did their diaries on their own. They actually kept physical diaries. So it was like a physical diary that they had to buy. And then they'd submit it at the end of the week. And then the teachers would check it. It was like 100 words a day, roughly about 100 words a day, 500 words a week. But yeah, as you can imagine, with out of class work, as you kind of mentioned earlier, Sandra, it's just really difficult to keep that under control. And there were some students who continued to do it earnestly, I think. But by far the majority of students were just, rampantly using AI. And I got caught out on one occasion actually, where I had a student, because one of the things that I used the diaries for was not just to get feedback from students, but it was I also picked up on, usually repeat mistakes that they made. I wasn't going through with a red pen and correcting everything, but if they made the same sort of mistake, third person singular S or something, I would correct that point in their writing and just highlight it for them. But there was one student who just wrote perfect writing every week, and he always wrote about interesting topics, which was so interesting for me. And finally, after a month or so of this, or 2 months of this, in my feedback to him, I said, "Oh wow, it was really interesting hearing your thoughts about the war in Ukraine. I wonder, are they really your thoughts, or possibly the thoughts of an impersonal AI bot? Let me know." And because I just assumed, like I'm sure most other teachers would have, that he was just basically getting AI to do the work for him. He replied to me and said that actually they are my ideas. What I do is I write my diary out first, I get AI to check it, and AI gives me the perfect corrected version of my diary entry, and that's what I physically write in the diary. That's why there are no mistakes. And that's why my writing seems perfect. And I had to eat humble pie and say, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I shouldn't have doubted you. Because he was a very smart student too. So
Well,
yeah,
in some way though, I mean, it's this fear of making mistakes has always been around. I think it's very strong in Japan.
very much.
And so AI has taken some of that fear out of the equation, but it also means that students are not making mistakes and learning from them as much anymore, which is
Absolutely.
a huge problem when it comes to actually learning. So,
Yeah. And I think that's why, Sandra, you sort of intimated at this earlier. I think that's really pushed things back to face in class now. I mean, not completely, but I think it's really given a more of a drive to having that sit down in front of your classmates, the teacher, in a relatively controlled environment where the teacher is not going to wonder whether you're, just relying entirely for everything on generative
mm,
AI and not engaging yourself. And yeah, so I'm really sad we had to say goodbye to the diaries, but it was sort of inevitable, really, because we weren't doing it in class.
mm.
It meant that because the class was just too busy with other activities as it was. Yeah.
We, in my classes, we always have had for a while, free writing, 5 minute free writing, so that it gives us a baseline to see all the wonderful writing they turn into homework. We can actually get more of a read on what their actual ability is, because in every single class they do 5 minutes of their own writing in front of the teacher,
Yep.
and no dictionaries or AI allowed. So,
We do
uh,
exactly the same thing, Sandra.
yeah,
Not every class, every week. We do once a week, 5 minutes, exactly
yeah,
the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah,
5 minutes free writing. We give them a topic, a really simple topic, usually,
yeah.
so that they should be able to just write without. And we tell them don't no, I don't allow
Yep.
erasers for that. No
Yep.
rubbers. Um,
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
just say you got to write, like just write, write, write. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Keep going. You can cross it out if you want to, but I don't want to see you erasing, 3 lines of your text. You just got to
Yeah.
get it all out. And
That's
you're right, it's a very good baseline for where students are at in terms of their writing
and it
ability.
takes away a little bit of the fear that a lot of students start out with trying to write. So yeah. I have to see if you have a list of free writing topics. I have a list too. Perhaps we could
Oh, I'd love
exchange,
to. Yes, I would
because
love to
that's
exchange,
I'm
Sandra.
always on
Absolutely.
the lookout. I
Yep.
will definitely contact you with that one. Now,
Yep.
Chris in the chat says, "How can you learn from the corrections to your own writing made by AI?" Yes, you
Yes.
can't. Yeah, that's the issue, I guess. And
Mm.
he's also said, "What about free speaking and recording yourself? In what way? I'm not
You mean using
sure."
AI to record? You'd have to have the add-on, right,
Mm,
for speaking and listening, which not all students have access to if they're using the free uh ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
Or isn't
Yes.
he just suggesting that's a good idea? Or did I misunderstand Chris? I mean, Chris can comment himself.
Maybe he's
So he's
saying
just
that's
suggesting that would be something that, along with free writing, why not free speaking? That's what I took his comment to mean.
right,
Yeah,
Mm.
that's what I meant. Yeah,
right.
just an alternative to writing, free speaking. You can record it, and that is what your level of English really is.
Hmm.
Yep, true. Yes.
Yes, it's I think Paul, what you were saying, Paul M, the it's going back to as much as we can do in the classroom, more analog, so that we can keep an eye on cheating or people who are using AI, so that they can actually still continue to learn. Because the way it's going, it's slowly creeping further in, and I've certainly seen a lot more this year than I have in last year. And I had a very frightening experience with a student, a high school student who has been going to high school in the States, who came back for a visit, and he was showing us all the ways that he's using AI to cheat, him and his friends, and not just AI for cheating, but the use of humanizers. So he had the whole suite of AI apps, and then he also had a whole suite of humanizer apps so that he could get the AI answer and then use the humanizer app to make it seem like it's more human. So I guess that's the next thing that'll be coming our way.
And even, I mean, really smart students can do that already,
Mm,
like you can get very smart Japanese students, and I've got plenty of them who will say to AI, please make this output, this written output, in the style of a Japanese student who is an intermediate level learner making, typical mistakes that a Japanese learner would make, so that I can fool my teacher into thinking that
mm.
I wrote this. You
Crazy.
know, yeah.
That is frightening, absolutely frightening. Now, I was just wondering, one thing that you mentioned in the your stats and your post reading tests,
Yep.
uh, you had the gloss and non-gloss group, so ones that
Yep.
encountered the gloss on Xreading, and ones that did not. But it looked like the gloss group seemed to have bigger gains. Do you have any idea how that? Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit surprising. I mean, having an immediate definition or something is quite useful when you're reading, but I'm surprised that it's such a large difference between the two groups.
Yeah. That's also a great question. I think one of the things I mentioned in in my paper when I was writing about this was the simple fact that I think one of the key points was that because the gloss was right in line with the location of the word in the text, glancing over to the gloss didn't really, it's a momentary. Obviously, we didn't have eye tracking. I wasn't using eye tracking um, technology, but because of the location of the gloss being right next to where the word appears, I think it didn't, rather than looking at a gloss in the back of the book or
Mm,
looking up a word in a dictionary and taking that 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes to find the definition of the word, they had it right there. And essentially, the gloss group got an extra instance of that word in a way, right? They saw the
mm,
word in the sentence, and then immediately they saw the Japanese definition of that word every time it appeared for the first time, whereas the non-gloss group didn't have that. All they had was the encounter with the word in the text, and then they moved on in the text, and then they got the next encounter with the next word, and so on.
mm,
Um, so I think that that was something that probably helped. And the other thing was, I think I mentioned this, but I had to make a decision with the gloss about the format for the gloss, because obviously it's Japanese gloss, but also I mentioned that the academic word list is a word families list, right? So a lot of the words have multiple functions, right? So for
mm,
example, the AWL word benefit can be a noun and a verb, right? And then there's beneficial, other word family items. So I thought, well, for a word like benefit, do I put both the noun form and the verb form in? Do I include all the word family items as well? Do I include all of the all of the all the other related word forms. What do I do? And ultimately, I went with just a very simple gloss, which was the way the word is used in the text when it's glossed. So if benefit comes up in a noun form, which I think it does in book one, then it's benefit rieki, not rieki suru. Um, right? Um, so I think that sort of reduced a little bit of the load on the students, and I think, hopefully made that connection even marginally stronger. And you're right, Sandra, there was a slight, but not
Mm.
significant higher performance for the gloss group over the non-gloss group. But I need to go back and check my paper again, but I don't remember it being statistically significant. But there was statistical significance for the two groups that read the able readers across all three groups when looking at word gains knowledge. So, and yeah, just a slight outperformance by the gloss group over the
Yeah,
non-gloss group. Yeah.
very interesting.
Mm.
Jackie's got a question here, which is probably Paul G. Are the AWL words included in the Xreading integrated glossary? Paul G.
Uh, oh, good question. I don't recall. Paul, did we do that? Paul might know,
No,
but no, I
we
didn't.
haven't. We haven't included the glossary, and I think that's probably something that will be good to do. However, as I said, I think yeah, I mean, ultimately having a glossary um, probably can only help. However, there's a big difference between having a glossary where they've got to go and find the word in the glossary. I think it's all about its ease of access, right? Can they get that glossed item brought up quickly so that it doesn't interrupt the
Mm,
flow of the text, right? Because that's really what extensive reading is all about, right? It's not, then extensive reading is not meant to be about a student reading a text and go every 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes, flicking through and finding the glossed word. They're meant to be reading through
absolutely.
without doing that, right?
But Paul,
And
I'm
so,
curious, are we talking about having a glossary at the end of the book or having be able to tap on the words?
Tap on the words.
tap on the words. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I see. Integrated glossary. Sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah,
Actually, sorry, Jackie. Jackie did say integrated glossary. Um, yeah, I think that would be great. Having an
but
integrated glossary function. Yeah,
from my
sorry, Paul.
understanding, I think Paul, you decided we should not do that because it would have interfered with research you were doing at that time.
Yes.
So yes,
Um,
we should do it. I think it would be a great thing to do. I think yeah, we just didn't do it because you needed to make sure students couldn't do it because of the control group or something like that.
Yeah. And also, I guess I mean, the other thing as well with my research, that obviously the glosses were in Japanese, because they were for my students. Any integrated glossary and Xreading is going to have to be simplified English,
English, yeah.
not any specific second language, right?
Mhm.
And very kindly, Rob Waring, way back, I've got this in writing, so if Rob ever says he didn't say this, I can say, oh, you did. No, Rob's been really helpful. Rob shared with me his wonderful resource of all of the AWL words defined in simple English and with good, simple example sentences as an Excel document, which I've got, so that would hopefully make making an integrated glossary easy enough. And it's a really good idea.
Yeah, we could do that yeah, we can talk later about that.
Mm.
And while actually I had if there's any other questions in the chat, I had a couple of things I wanted to bring up.
No, go for it.
Okay. Going back to the stories themselves, I'm just curious of the people in this meeting, how many have actually read some, all or some of My Mysterious Friend Sora? Has this been discussed already in the beginning of the meeting?
Nope, nope.
Sandra, have you?
I don't have access to Xreading.
Okay. Oh, we've talked about this before. You should, so I can give it to you
I
again.
know.
Um,
As soon as I get access, I'll be
okay.
reading
Well,
it.
anybody
And
in this meeting
yeah.
who wants to, if someone, I can't type very easily, but if anybody puts my email address, I'm happy to give somebody. They are fantastic. I was, I thought as a favor to Paul, I put the books on Xreading, and in advance because it was during COVID, we had plenty of time. He sent me, and I kind of put off reading it. I said, okay, I really don't. They're quite long, and yeah, I was absolutely hooked from the first book, especially that amazing. How can I say it, Paul, without giving too much away? The first book, the ending of it will just get anybody hooked. And considering that has very little experience writing fiction, I just was blown away by how good a story it was. Not to mention the fact that he was able to include all the academic words. Just the story itself, I thought was very, very compelling. I want to go through everyone. It kind of doesn't each one end with a cliffhanger?
Yes, I said at the start, that was one of the things, one of the principles when I was developing the books was to try to make sure that there's something exciting
Yeah,
happening in each book, and particularly at the end of the books, just so it sort of leads on to the next one. So I've just
yeah.
shared Paul's
Oh, thanks. Yes, if
email in the
anybody
chat.
wants access to read, I can set you up with a free student account. And oh, Sandra, you should have one forever. I don't know why yours
Thank you.
expired. But yeah, especially the cliffhanger of the first one just blew my mind. I just did not expect that to be what it was, and from there on, I was totally hooked. So they're really worth reading. And then you consider the incredible. And again, as Paul said, as you're reading it as a native speaker, you'd be like, that's kind of an odd sentence. Why did he throw this, like the word levy, to suddenly be, how you fit that word in? Definitely was like, oh, that's I don't know why you're talking about that. So, why that, what was it? There was they were going down a bumpy road, right?
That's right. Good memory, Paul. Yeah.
And they said, oh, why is the road so bumpy? Oh, the government hasn't, they don't levy enough taxes to get the highways fixed or something like that. It was kind of like an odd part, but but nothing, came out too strange. The other thing I was going to say is, Paul, a question for you, which I should know, but I can't remember. In book one,
Hmm.
you'll have all the words from the first list.
Yep.
And in later books, those words can show up again if you found that they fit in, correct?
Absolutely.
But in book one, could you find other words from the academic word list, the higher levels, if it fit in, or
Yes.
you purposely didn't use it?
No, that's a great question. There was some, yeah, so I didn't mention this actually, but in the um in the books that I used for the research, for my research project, so I had all of the AWL words that were used in sequence. So like in book one, all of the sublist one AWL words were in bold when they were used for the first time. So this is a word you need to know for this list from this week. And then all of the other AWL words were italicized so that students would know, oh, any italics word is either a recycling word from the previous list, or as Paul just said, it could be a word from a later
Okay.
list. Because to be honest, I think if I'd been really strict and said no words from later lists, it would have been almost impossible. I said earlier, like medical is one of the words. I think it's sublist 5, right?
Okay.
And the story is set at a medical university. So, how I set up the story without using the word medical until book 5 would have just been pretty impossible, really. So, but yes, that's a great question, and I did forget to mention that. So, yeah, but that's something we haven't been able to kind of transpose to the Xreading version, um, just because of the way it's set up. But yes, words are used from all of the lists throughout the books at various points. It's just that they're also used in sequence, kind of systematically,
Okay.
randomly too.
Two other things to mention is that I don't get it. Sorry, Paul, if you said this, and this will be, I think Sandra will be happiest about this news, is that we do at some point plan to publish some physical copies of the
About
books.
time.
Yep,
And the hardest thing was getting the artwork done, or the most expensive, and that is an area where I think Paul's agreed AI could be
yep, absolutely.
helpful.
That's something I'm working on in the summer break.
Great, great.
Yay.
And
Yep.
potentially, I know, Paul, I've really dropped the ball on this, but having a intensive workbook to go along with the story. So some academic word textbooks have all intensive exercise and activities, and then a short reading passage to go along with it. We'd be doing the opposite, adding some exercise and activities for learning the vocabulary to go along with the stories that are already done. Did you touch on that at all?
No, I haven't actually, Paul. So yeah, yeah, we've been talking about publishing a physical version for some time, and it's sort of, there's been a whole lot of things that have gotten in the way of that. Partly that's me as well. I know Paul said he's dropped the ball on that. That's very much on me too. Because haven't had the sort of bandwidth to deal with it. But my plan over the next few months is to well, first thing I'm looking at doing is actually getting an audio version for the Xreading. So as I mentioned a little earlier, we're making podcasts at the moment using 11 Labs. So while we've got our 11 Labs account, one of the things I'm going to be doing is creating an audio version for Xreading for the Sora
Forgot
books.
about that. Great.
Yeah. So that's my immediate project in the next, I guess, sort of 6 weeks. But then the follow-up to that is, as Paul said, is trying to get some artwork done. And there's now, AI is just making great leaps and strides with that, because that's been probably the biggest problem up to this point is, the cost and the difficulty of getting, good quality artwork. But now that, AI has the capability of kind of doing that for us, I think that will make that next step that much easier. So, yes, watch this space.
Right. Paul, did you have any other comments or questions?
I thought I had one other thing, but I can't remember
That's okay.
just maybe about I think you did mention the other books that you're working on. I'm really excited seeing how great the stories, never mind the academic word aspect, but the stories you wrote were so good. So hopefully the new nursing oriented, medical oriented graded readers that you and Rob are working on will also, I'm have high expectations that there'll be some good stories.
Yeah, I've got kind of a cool idea for that, which I need to talk a little bit more with you, Paul. Since we last talked, I've sort of mapped out an idea for a story that I think will be.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be hard to live up to the expectations of this series that I made. They say everyone has one story, right? One book. Is that the idea? I feel like I'll forever be living in the shadow of this creation, but because it really was a labor of love, for sure. And I put a huge amount of energy into it. But I'm hoping that we can do, yeah, because I teach nursing students too. I did think I mentioned that at the start, and I work with a lot of nursing colleagues at other universities, and they, a bunch of them have been kind of hassling me. When are you going to do something for nurses? You teach nurses, for goodness sake. Why are you only focusing on medical students? So that's in the pipeline too.
Excellent.
So you've been bit by the writing bug then.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I've definitely been gratified by the generally positive reaction to the books, not least of all from my students who, I think that was really why I got this going in the first place. But going to conferences and meeting people from around Japan and around the world, actually, some of whom have said that they've used the books, and the students have reacted well to them. That's been really, really rewarding.
Did you share the comment you got from a student in Thailand?
I didn't actually, Paul. I stopped. So that was in my previous iterations of presentations. Yeah, there was one Thai student who just raved about the books. He said it was the best books he'd read on Xreading. This was a couple of years ago. And at previous presentations I'd given, I know, Sandra, you said you've been to a few of them. Hey, Benjamin.
Yeah.
I'd used that quote and had to, say, hand on my heart, that no baht or yen had exchanged hands. It was just that student's honest
Totally
feedback.
over the top, but humor, yeah.
So yeah, that was cool.
Wonderful. Okay, well, is there anyone else who has a question? Please type in the chat or ask it out loud. And if there's no one else, we can end this portion of the session, the recorded portion. So everyone, round of applause, virtual and in real life. Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. It's really always good to have some fresh new ideas. So thank you very much. And
thank you for having me. That was great. And for the great questions and comments as well. Fantastic.
All right. Thank you very much.